more and more audiences have become engaged because of that authenticity and showing that vulnerable side. And that's why the work that I do now, I wouldn't have been able to do had it not been for that amazing swimming career. So, I got to do so many amazing things, but winning gold at that crucial time was just not one of them. And, there's no regrets or anything like that, but that's just my story. And, it will forever be the best time, I guess.
Hi, I'm Kyla, a business coach, mentor, and I'm currently studying a degree in nutrition. I'm a mum of 2 and I live in Australia.
And I'm Emilia. I'm the author of the book It's Your Life and the founder of the fashion brand Emilia Ortmann. I'm originally from Germany but live in Dubai, and I'm a mum of 4.
In our raw and authentic episodes, we share with you all things business, motherhood, and holistic lifestyle,
as well as bringing you inspiring interviews with other entrepreneurs.
Welcome to the Mums in Biz podcast.
Welcome back to the Mums in Biz podcast. Before we start with the interview that I have for you today, I just want to thank you for you being here and listening to the podcast and supporting us and downloading the episodes from iTunes, giving us feedback, constructive feedback, and sending us reviews wherever that is, on iTunes or on social media. Thank you so much. As we always say, this means the world to us. It keeps us going. It gives us, lots of ideas as well, and things we can improve and things where we're doing well. So that really helps. Thank you so much for doing that. And thank you. And please continue spreading the word. We want to reach more women and mums and around the world who have a business or who just want to listen to us and be inspired and learn something new with every episode, hopefully. And today I have an incredible interview, like what I think, for you with Jessica Smith, who is Australian and now lives in Dubai. And she's a former Paralympian swimmer, so a professional swimmer. Now she is a motivational speaker and also an author of children's books. And she's a mother of 3 young kids. She was born missing her left arm and then also suffering a horrific kitchen accident when she was a toddler, sustaining burns to 50% of her body. But she defied the odds and went on to represent Australia in swimming for 7 years and representing Australia at the 2004 Paralympic Games in Athens as well. And I met Jessica just before the pandemic at an event, which was like an Australian event for women in business. And I listened to her story and her perseverance and how she, went from being a swimmer with a disability to a public speaker. And her whole story was so captivating that I asked her then already, do you want to be on the podcast, or would you like to be? I would love to interview you. And it took us actually, because of the pandemic and everything that is going on, over a year and a half to actually make this happen. But finally, I have her today on the podcast for you. We talked about, obviously, her incredible story of how she became a competitive swimmer. In general, how she is very competitive. We talked a lot about visualization, which she didn't know that so many people don't know what a powerful tool it is, because she was using it on a daily basis. Also about body image and how to see people that are different and people with a disability, but also people with a different skin color or religion, and what we can teach our kids, or if we have to teach our kids anything at all. Okay, so now let me welcome Jessica on the podcast and let's dive into the interview. And I hope you enjoyed as much as I did talking to her. So welcome, Jessica, to the Mums in Biz podcast. We are so happy that you're here today with me. To start off with, I've introduced you like the formal way already, but maybe you can introduce yourself, who you are, where you come from, what you're doing, everything about you yourself in your own words.
Yeah, certainly. So thank you so much for having me. For those who are listening, my name is Jessica Smith, and I am a former Paralympic swimmer. And I work now in the industry of body image and diversity in a few different roles, I suppose, as a speaker, an author, and also as an activist. So I was born missing my left arm, and to this day, we still don't know why that occurred. But growing up, I obviously knew that I was very different because the world that we live in is very appearance focused. And a lot of the adults in my life sort of labeled me and put me into boxes saying, that because I had a disability, I might not be able to achieve certain things. And I guess I always had this burning desire or an innate ability to push the boundaries and the rules, both literally and metaphorically. And for me, I wanted to prove to myself and everybody else around me that I could do things. And I guess the natural way for me to do that was through moving my body and showing them that, I wasn't going to be diminished because of my appearance. And there's so many things that I could do. And so for me, that evolved into really throwing myself into sport. And I fell in love with swimming at a very young age. And it gave me this sense of freedom to really prove that my body was so much more capable of what people thought I was able to do. And so I've had a life, traveling the world as a Paralympian. And then after that, going on to becoming a motivational speaker, but really wanting to talk about body image and diversity because I feel that that's something that everyone can relate to. So my role now is how I'm able to draw the parallels from, my swimming career and apply that into the life that I'm leading now as a mother, as a wife, and the work that I do, and sort of being able to bring everything back to something that's relatable to people from all walks of life. And so I've been in Dubai now for about just over 2 years. And in that time, really learning about a new culture and understanding of how people perceive disability and difference. And if anything, it's been an opportunity for me to really explore the work that I do even more so. So it's been some really exciting times, even through, COVID and everything that's happened. So I'm excited to be here, and I'm excited to, meet so many other people who are working in their own industries, but wanting to support one another. And I found that the community in Dubai is by far the most supportive that I've ever experienced through, all the places I've been in my life. And it's actually surprising for me. I wasn't sure that it would be like that. And so I found that, with meeting people like yourself and meeting other women in business, I find that there's so many opportunities here at the moment. Obviously, there's a lot of challenges as well, especially being female. But I feel like now is a really interesting time. Lots of things are changing, and within changes, we have to look for the opportunity. So, it's exciting to be able to be in this region at this time and to collaborate and learn from people like yourselves to really understand how we can work together to create a society and a community where women feel empowered and benefited from networking and getting to know one another.
Mm. Wow, I have some questions prepared, but now I have so many new questions in my head after hearing you speak. First of all, I didn't know that you moved here only 2 years ago. So when we met a year and a half ago, you hadn't been here for a long time.
I hadn't been here very long at all, just a year. And then in that first year we arrived, I fell pregnant with my third child. So that was sort of, pregnancy and babies that first year. And then obviously the second year was COVID. So it's been a very interesting time. I feel just now I'm able to just really explore Dubai, even though, it's still restrictions and things like that. So it's interesting times. I've really enjoyed it in that time, given, all the circumstances that, unfolded in those first 2 years of being here.
But I think you're right. You're coming at a time, I've been here almost 10 years now, and you're coming at a time that is it's amazing what's happening now. All the changes and so many opportunities and things opening up for women as well, and for businesses. It's a really great place to be for business. But anyway, let's talk about your swimming career first. because that's when I think I had never, no, I had met one other swimmer at my kids' school, Olympian swimmer. But when I met you, I was like, wow, she went to the Olympics. For me, growing up, my mom was a journalist. So for me, that was like, we watched it, a sports journalist, and she reported there. So for me, we watched them like every time they were on. So every like winter, summer, para, whatever that was on. And so it was amazing when I met you that you actually went there as an athlete, like not as a journalist or something else. So tell us a little bit more about when you realized that you're really good at swimming. I mean, it must have been amazing, obviously, the feeling.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, as I mentioned in that little intro, swimming initially gave me a sense of freedom because I was able to move my body and just feel powerful in the water. So this I'm talking about from age 5. I had a backyard swimming pool in Australia, and so children learn how to swim from like a few months old. So I enjoyed being in the water, but it was from a young age that I felt that I was able to really feel powerful. And through that, I remember swimming at my first school swimming carnival. It was a 50 meters freestyle, and I won. I beat all the girls and boys, with 2 arms. There was nobody else in my school that had a disability. And it was in that moment. So I was 10 years old, and I realized that the sense of pride and exhilaration and positivity that I felt, because I felt as though I was finally being recognized and acknowledged for what I could do rather than what I couldn't. So I remember saying to my mum and dad, I won and I want to swim forever. And at that time, nobody really knew what that meant. And we weren't even aware of the Paralympic Games. It's something that wasn't televised. Not many people knew about it back then. I'm in my mid-30s now, so going back a few years or a couple of decades. And so for the initial period, I was competing against, girls and boys that didn't have a disability. And that gave me this idea, that, or sense of self-esteem and self-confidence that I'd never really had before. And when you're in that place of feeling happy about yourself and positive, you never really want to let that go, no matter how old you are. And so I really wanted to tap into feeling confident all the time. And so I started swimming and training, and it sort of just was this natural progression where I was good at swimming. So there was this natural talent. And at age 13, I was selected onto my first Australian swimming squad. And it was in that short space of time that we were, or when I say we, my family and I, my parents, became aware of the Paralympic Games and athletes with a disability competing, at a national and international level. And again, that just excited me so much, because I was like, wow, there is this community of like-minded people who are not only, trying to overcome the daily challenges of living with a disability, but wanting to go further and push their body and push their mind to go beyond the limits or the expectations that society was putting on us. And so being around other athletes with a disability and being able to travel the world and win medals and break records, it was a phenomenal experience. And I will treasure that forever. I represented Australia for 7 consecutive years, and it was just such a fantastic time for me, because I think it was what I really needed to sort of take myself out of this world that could have been very dark and damaging when it comes to, being limited by my disability. And so it was a platform for me to be able to say, hey, I can do so much more than what you think I can. And this is me trying to prove that and show that. So it was an amazing experience. But in my story, I guess people are waiting for me to say, or when I won the gold medal at the Olympics and I went on to live happily ever after. And for me, I didn't have that fairy tale story, because even though I had an amazing career as a swimmer and an elite athlete, I was struggling with body image issues, just like any, young girl or teenage girl trying to understand my identity away from the pool. When I was with my friends, wanting to feel popular and wanting to feel included, and pretty and accepted, and all of those things that, teenage girls and going through puberty, you know, what they're facing. And for me, swimming, I guess, was an outlet. It was the place I could go to be myself. But when I was away from the Australian team and just back at school, you know, and just Jessica with a disability, it was really, really hard for me to try and break through some of the own stigma that I had allowed to infiltrate my own thinking. And for me, I still believed that I wasn't good enough, you know, because my body didn't look like the models and the celebrities that I saw, you know, in television, in magazines. And I convinced myself that because of that, I would never be good enough no matter what I did. You know, no Olympic gold would take away from the fact that I was so different. And I knew my arm wasn't going to grow back. And I knew, you know, I had a childhood accident where I spilt boiling water onto myself, and I have scars on 15% of my body. So that was another, you know, hurdle to overcome. I knew the scars would always be there. But I thought if I could change everything else about my body that I thought I could control, then maybe society would accept me. You know, if I could lose weight to fit within the societal molds of beauty and perfection, maybe that would then outweigh the obvious imperfections. And so all of this was going on while I was traveling the world representing Australia. You know, it was a huge burden to carry. And when I reached age 19, I was at the Paralympic Games in Athens, the pinnacle of my career. You know, I trained so hard to get to that point. But it was also when my body image and my eating disorder, I had lived with bulimia and anorexia throughout the entirety of my swimming career. But because of the shame and the guilt associated with mental illness and eating disorders, it wasn't something that I told anyone, really. And so when I landed in Athens, it was supposed to be, you know, the most amazing experience of my life. But for me, it was very bittersweet because I was expected to medal in 3 events, but I was the only swimmer on the Australian team who didn't make a final. And it was absolutely devastating. And it's taken me so long to be able to even voice that, you know, over the years, even as a speaker. You know, the immediate years after Athens, I remember I never touched on that side of things. I just told the audience what I thought they wanted to hear, because it was too painful to say, actually, you know, I didn't achieve what I was supposed to. And I felt like a failure, and I felt as though I had let my coach down, my family down. And so at what was supposed to be the height of my career, which it was also a huge turning point in my life, because I came back to Australia and I was actually admitted to a rehab facility where I spent 6 weeks as an inpatient for treatment for my eating disorder. And it was during that initial stage of recovery that I had to make the decision to walk away from swimming altogether, because I knew that that life that I was living wasn't going in the direction that I needed it to. And if I stayed doing the same things and being around the same environment, that I probably wouldn't be here today. And so it was so excruciating to know that I had to turn my back on swimming, because at that point, as a 19-year-old, even though I was, you know, at university and, you know, I had my academics behind me, I felt, you know, who was I without my swimming career? I didn't want to go back to just being a female with a disability. And so it was so difficult to try and put enough trust and faith in myself and in the recovery process to know that, you know, sometimes we have to close doors or end chapters to move on to the next part of our life. And for me, you know, I'd hit rock bottom. You know, I had nothing else to lose, basically. Once my swimming career had ended, relationships had ended, friendships, like it was turmoil. And it was in that moment that I thought, well, I have to trust this next process. And thankfully I did at the time. And so my swimming career will always be, you know, something that I treasure and hold dear, because even though I didn't win an Olympic gold, I still won a lot of gold medals throughout that time around the world. But it's interesting, because I think when a lot of people hear, you know, or there's an athlete that's going to be speaking, you know, it is that fairy tale ending. And only one person can win gold, only one person can win silver and bronze in regards to swimming or at the Olympics. And there's so many other athletes who were just so close, but didn't get there on the day. And that was me and my story. And so, in the last few years, I've been able to share the reality of that. And I think more and more audiences have become engaged because of that authenticity and showing that vulnerable side. And that's why the work that I do now, I wouldn't have been able to do had it not been for that amazing swimming career. So, I got to do so many amazing things, but winning gold at that crucial time was just not one of them. And, there's no regrets or anything like that, but that's just my story. And, it will forever be the best time, I guess.
But I think it makes it even more relatable. For me, like seeing you and having that goal even to go to the Olympics is like something that would never cross my mind, as like an ordinary sports person, I would call it. Yeah, for you it would be gold. For me, it would just mean like participating even is like amazing,
Yeah.
I think. But then I guess I'm not as competitive as you are. I see the difference in my kids already, that one of them is so competitive, and for him it would only be if they both used to swim, and it would only be winning. The other one just wanted to participate. So you can, like, one is like me, one is like my husband, but it's interesting.
Yes.
Yeah. But anyway, I love that authenticity. That's really inspiring.
Yeah, I think, when you can show that side of you, because I was obviously very competitive as well, and I remember people would say, oh, but you got there, and that's what's important. And I was like, no, I wanted to win gold. That's why I went there. That's why I trained, 6 days a week for years and years and years, and sort of lost, not opportunities, but moments at university when everybody else was partying, and I was like, no, this is my goal, and this is what I'm driven to do. And how you lay out those goals, and that every single training session is one step closer to the ultimate reward. I think, for a lot of athletes, it's trying to find that balance. But when you are training for the Olympics or the Paralympics, there's a lot of stuff that you have to push to the side, because you have to be so focused, you have to be so driven, and you cannot let other, outside influences come in. And I think the downside to that is, for me at that time, I wasn't prioritizing my mental health. And I think that a lot of, elite athletes can relate to that. It's like, we just have to focus on this right now. We'll come back to the mental health side of things. And I think in recent years, we've seen, a big shift where, coaches and governing bodies realize that the mental health should always be the priority. And, for me, it just wasn't at the time. And unfortunately, that's why, my career ended. And now talking about my story and sharing that with other athletes, empowering them to use their voice to say, okay, we're straight. It might not be with body image, it might be, with other things, but feeling as though they have a voice that they can raise their concerns and their issues with coaches and, team staff, so that it's not just swept under the rug and then becomes an issue later. So there's been a lot of work happen, especially, with the Australian Institute of Sports that I've worked with closely over the years. And I think through sharing stories as former athletes, we heal ourselves, but we help other people heal as well. So it's been a really, really interesting journey to get to this point.
And what has been your biggest learning from your swimming career? What is something that you would, pass on to your kids? And would you allow your kids to go into swimming?
Just swimming. My husband and I have this conversation all the time. Yeah, because it's very early mornings. He said if we do it, then I have to take them. To be honest, I really think it would be visualization. And this is something that I learned very on in my swimming career, about seeing myself winning the gold medal, seeing myself exactly where I needed to be in a training session, or, at a smaller competition on the way, whether it's state championships, national championships, and then an international competition. But visualization is something that I learned, I think, from as young back as I can remember within my sporting career. So 13, my coach was like, see yourself winning it. it was easy for me to do. I was like, yeah, I can see myself winning it. And I'll often talk to adolescents and youth when I go into school about the power of visualization and the voice, that internal voice that we have, because there were so many races where I would step up onto the blocks and I already knew I was going to win and I would win. Then there were races where I was hesitant, or I hadn't visualized enough, or I hadn't, prepared mentally, and I didn't win. And there's so much work now and studies that have been done with the power of visualization. And, it's amazing what can be done within the sporting field. I mean, there's studies that I've watched where people have been swimming or running the race in their mind, and they've been hooked up to the computers, and the same physiological effects take place in your body when you're visualizing as, opposed to actually competing. It's absolutely fascinating. So the power of being able to do that is so profound. And that's something that I've also taken into every area of my life. So if I'm presenting at a school or in a corporate setting, I'll already see myself there in the audience, memorize what I'm going to say and to every little, point, so that when I do get there, it feels like I've already done this before. It's really comfortable and I know how it's going to pan out. Obviously, we don't know how every situation in our life is going to pan out, but when you use this tool of visualizing, it brings into effect the energy and the mental awareness that we need to have to prepare ourselves. And it's helped me in everything from childbirth through to, sitting exams, to obviously competing. And I think that that's something that I really want to ensure that my children understand from a young age. That age-old saying, if you see it and you believe it, it can happen. And I think a lot of people overlook the simplicity of it, because sometimes it seems, oh, well, that's not real, it's imaginary, it's fake. But from my personal experience, and especially from other athletes, I know just how powerful it is. So, I have my vision board, and my daughter, who's 5, we did a vision board for her together, and I said, you're seeing it, every day, whatever it is that you want, whether, for a 5-year-old, it's a new Barbie doll, or, what I mean. It doesn't so much matter about what the thing is or the situation is. It's different for everybody. But if you can practice this sense of visualization and how that's going to look, it's much easier when the situation does arise. But for me, what I've also learned is that comes to fruition first if we practice gratitude. And I think that, that was something that I lost along the way, certainly when I was really struggling with my eating disorder and stages of depression, is when I wasn't practicing that sense of gratitude and not being in the moment. And so that's something that, I try to emphasize with my daughter is, what are we grateful for today? And she's only 5, so it's not like it has to be these really, profound things, but just all the little things. We're grateful that, the sun is shining. We're grateful for the flowers, and she's grateful for her toys, and it just plants that seed for children to try and understand their world and their surroundings. So, that's what I hope anyway, and something that I'll make sure that I can, try and instill in all of the kids.
Yeah, we do the same. Every night before they go to bed, I ask them, what are they grateful for? And even my youngest, who's also 5, just turned 5, and she asked if I forget. She tells me, you have to ask me what I'm grateful for. That's really sweet, I think. And I do it every day, because I always think they go to bed then with on a positive note, exactly about something positive. Yeah. But I love that you're mentioning that visualization is your biggest learning. I didn't realize that. I heard you talk about, I told you, I heard you talk about it once on social media, where you said you didn't realize that not everybody was doing this. And because you can, as you said, you can use it for anything, a meeting, even anything. Yeah, I thought that was really interesting. But how do you do it? Do you sit down in a meditation and like a meditation, or is it like a thing that just goes in your head all the time?
It can be
on the podium.
It can be part of meditation, but I've never been one to be able to sit still for very long. So for me, it's any moment of sort of quietness or clarity that I might have. So it might be on the drive to pick up the kids from school, or it might be just before I'm going to bed, or it might be when I'm in the bathroom, so you don't necessarily have to visualize the entire duration of the event, for example. So if I was giving a talk, it might not be that I sit and visualize everything in that setting, but it's visualizing at any moment that I can. So, for example, if I have a talk coming up, obviously that's planned. It's something that's in the calendar. I know when it is and the timing. So I'll start preparing myself mentally for, okay, what will I wear? How will I stand? And because all of those things impact, that sense of body image and confidence that I have when I'm on stage. And then when I've visually seen how I want to look, then it helps me to visualize the verbalizing of what I might be saying. And, it's funny to talk about it, because for me, it's something that just comes so naturally now. Like I visualize, for example, we went on a holiday just before COVID to Australia, and I was visualizing, where everyone was going to sit in the plane and what we would wear. And for me, it just helps me be prepared, I guess. And I think in your mind, if you've already seen it and you've already been or had that sense that you've experienced before, if anything happens and there's sort of changes, you're more equipped to deal with them mentally, if that makes sense. So meditating and a little bit of like that hypnotherapy type of thing, but it doesn't necessarily have to mean that you need to find a quiet space in a tranquil garden and sit down to be able to do it. It can happen anywhere, anytime. It's just a matter of taking yourself to that place, wherever it may be, and focusing on it for long enough for it to register in your mind. So yeah, it's something that I just practice all the time now. And like you said, I mentioned it on social media, and I did a bit of a poll, and I didn't realize that not everybody did this, that not everybody was visualizing their day ahead and what was going to happen next week. Whereas for me, that's just what I'm always doing. Maybe that's why, my mind is always going, but it allows me to feel more confident in every situation that I'm in. And so I really encourage people to research this a little bit more, or to start doing it, whether it doesn't have to be, work related. It can be family related, or an uncomfortable situation that is coming up, where you have to have an encounter with somebody that you perhaps don't get along with so well. How can you mentally prepare yourself for that situation? And visualization helps so much, because it allows your mind to think that you've already been there before. You can handle it, you feel confident. It just gives you that sense of, I guess, stability in any of those situations.
We talk a lot about visualization as well for your business, and also how to make a vision board. We have an episode even on how to make a vision board. And
Amazing.
We get the feedback a lot that people don't do it or don't know what it actually means, and so on. So that didn't surprise me, but it surprised me that it surprised you so much. It was interesting.
Yeah.
But
I think as well, because a lot of my friends are athletes. Sorry, so I guess that for us it just comes naturally. So fascinating, really fascinating.
But just a practical question as well. What do you do when you see something and then suddenly something happens in your visualization and you can't get it out of your head again, but you want to, because obviously you don't want that to happen.
Really good question.
Shall I give you like an example?
I do know what you mean.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I know exactly what you mean. So there are times. It's so interesting, and it just goes to show how powerful our mind is and how all the energies are around us. Because in simple terms, if I was to visualize myself winning a race, and then for whatever reason somebody else is creeping up faster and faster behind me, and then they win it, and that's in that visualization. To me, over the years, what I've realized is that means that there's something going on in my world and in my life that needs me to pay attention to it. So it's not so much, it's kind of like dreams, right? They don't all make sense at the time, but that there's a reason for why, your unconscious, subconscious mind is thinking these things. So in that regard, for me, it means, okay, I need to just take a step back now. I'll sort of stop visualizing or imagining sort of what's happening and think, okay, there's something else not right. There's something else that's not, in line with, am I not spending enough time on my health or on my fitness? Has the food and my nutrition gone downhill recently? Because I think it's a signal and it's a sign to say, okay, you're visualizing all these positive things that are happening, but if there's negativity or if there's something that we don't want to be in there, why is that happening? And it's not as simple as saying, oh, it's about the swimming race, because it's not. It's about other components of our life. And I mean, that took me a long time to realize and to accept. And then it's a matter of then exploring that personally with your own journey and thinking, okay, well, what is it? And most of us know. If we ask ourselves that question, okay, well, what aren't we focusing on at the moment that we should be? Deep down, we know those answers. And I think if we then take a time to sit and think, okay, well, what's really going on here? Something doesn't feel right. There's a disconnection, I think if we explore those things deep enough ourselves, we'll always find the answer. But sometimes the truth and finding those answers is something that we want to avoid. And hence why they come up in these sorts of visualizations, because we haven't allowed ourselves to deal with it in day-to-day life and in real life settings. And so for me, it's about becoming aware and thinking, okay, well, something's not right here. There's a miss, and I need to take a bit of time out to focus on where this is coming from, and then go back into the visualization. And again, like I said, I'm not sitting down at certain points. It's just whenever that might happen, and taking the chance and the opportunity, because I think that's important as well. Is that sometimes we can't set aside time to do all these little things. In an ideal world we could, but especially as mothers and women in business, it's very hard. So we have to take those opportunities. If your mind is saying, okay, I'm going to go off and sort of have this imagination and visualization out, go with it. I think it's really important. But yeah, it's about being aware and just noticing, okay, it's the same when you get that feeling, you're in an uncomfortable environment or something doesn't feel right, you're anxious about something. Well, what's going on? You need to take time out to go and address those things personally, because if you don't, it's like any sort of illness or sickness or stress in your body, if you let it grow when we don't pay attention to it, it becomes so much more of an issue. So the same applies to visualization and the meditating side of things, for sure.
I love it. I'm going to try that next time, but to really see what's going on.
Yeah.
Last question about the swimming. Are you still swimming? Are you still training? Or just
no, I'm not training
completely.
I retired such a long time ago, and it's really interesting. A lot of swimmers I know, we have like a love-hate relationship with the pool. I don't find it relaxing. For me, if I'm going to get into the pool, then I have to get in and I have to swim laps, and it has to be fast. And obviously, because I haven't swum for so long, I know it's not going to be fast and perfect form. And I think, when I speak for myself about that level of perfection and all black and white or all or nothing thinking that I had as an athlete, it's hard to dive into a pool and switch that off. It sort of just automatically comes on. And in that first sort of lap, I'm swimming so fast. I'm like, why? There's no need. I can just enjoy this. But I do find it very difficult. And even to swim with my kids, or my husband or friends at the pool, I don't love it. It's not my first choice of activities to do as relaxation. I'm like, oh, if we've got to go to the pool. Once I'm in the water, it feels fantastic, and I really do like it. But it's just that initial, mental barrier that I struggle with every single time. I'm like, oh, I don't want to get wet. I feel like I spent my entire life just wet and chlorine through my hair, and I'm like, oh, I'm done with that. Having said that, though, I mean, there's been a couple of times over the years where I have done a swimming session. I'm like, oh, it felt really good. But no, it's a very strange relationship that I have with the water.
Yeah. But I can a little bit imagine that, because I used to play golf a lot and quite well before I had kids. And then now a lot of my friends are starting, and they always say, oh, come with me, play golf and so on. I'm like, because I know I'm not playing as well as I used to, and then I will be disappointed, and then I will become a little bit competitive again, and so on. So I
Yes.
can relate to that a little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
And is there anything else that you do, like another sport that you've started where I guess you can't let go of this competitiveness altogether, right?
Mhm.
When you do something, you have
No,
to
I
do it
don't.
properly. Hmm?
Yeah, I don't think it ever disappears. So for me, after swimming, I took up running, and all of a sudden I was running like 15 kilometers a day, and for no reason. Like, I was enjoying it. But I think also that it was the body image side of things as well. There was also a sense of, I had to be moving my body, but also, to be honest, it was a sense of punishment as well. So throughout my eating disorder and sort of certainly in the early recovery stages, I used exercise as a way to have another outlet. So,
Mm.
when I wasn't struggling and coping with the feelings and emotions that were coming up with the body image side of things. So I had to be very, very careful. And the recommendations that I was given by professionals was, especially in that early stage of recovery, to take a huge step back from competitive sport, but any sport where I felt as though I could get lost in the activity rather than enjoying it for the social side of things. So, now these days, I really enjoy F45 classes and class activities, which I never ever would have done before, because again of the competitive side of things, but also because I was so self-motivated that I thought, I don't need to do, any of the classes. I'll go and do my own sessions. And now I'm really enjoying being around other people and having a bit of fun. And there will always be a competitive side. I always do a bit of like the side look, and I'm like, oh, okay, I have to push a bit harder or go a bit faster. That will always be there. I don't think that will ever disappear. And I mean, that's in every part of my life. That's business, that's everything. But to now be in a place where I feel content that I'm just using my body because I can, and because it's fun, and because it's social. As someone that's recovering from an eating disorder, to get to that place, I'm really proud to be where I am now. And I do enjoy all sorts of activities because it makes me feel good, not because I'm trying to reach a certain weight or to punish myself.
Mm, mm. Yeah, I get that. Let's talk about body image, your big topic now these days. How did you even get into speaking about it? I mean, of course, we heard now how you got more interested in, how you learned about it through your own experience, but when did you, I mean, I guess it's also again a little bit the competitiveness, right? To be but still putting
Mhm.
yourself out there on a stage where everybody can look at you, and it's different than swimming in the water, I guess. I mean, I don't know. You tell me
Oh,
what made you.
absolutely. No, it is very different. And I think it sort of was an organic development from after I competed in Athens. I was being asked to come and be a motivational speaker in schools and at events. And so I was talking about the swimming side of things. But when I started to talk about the body image struggles and my eating disorders, I noticed that the audiences were becoming a lot more engaged, and I was getting a lot more calls from organizations for me to come and talk about the real struggles. And so I found it really interesting because it was very confronting for me to share such personal information and to be so vulnerable on stage, and especially when you're sharing your personal journey and your story. If the audience doesn't like it, or if they're not responding, you take it incredibly personally, because it's sort of, a reflection of me and my life. And so it was very, I wouldn't say hard in the beginning, because there was also this sense of me wanting to share my story, because I'd been living in silence for almost a decade with the struggles of my eating disorder. Now I was being given an opportunity to talk about it. And it was at a time, going back, of been talking now on stage and, at events for probably a decade. And at the beginning, talking about these issues wasn't something that anybody else was really doing. And so I think it was also confronting for audiences. But having said that, they were relating to it a lot more. And so I realized that I was enjoying talking about that side of things more than the idolized experience as an athlete, even though that was amazing. It was trying to find the balance of saying, well, that was my life on the outside, but behind closed doors was a very different story. And I think for a lot of people, they can relate to that, wearing a mask or having this sort of facade for everybody else. But then what are you going through behind closed doors, and what are you dealing with that needs to be addressed? And so after Athens, there were just more and more opportunities. And through that work, I also turned to social media to try and use it as a platform for positive talk around body image. So again, about a decade ago, I created a social media campaign where the idea was people would share photos of themselves or parts of their body perhaps that they didn't love, as an opportunity to start a positive conversation around body image as a whole. And it was through that campaign that I was then contacted by a few eating disorder organizations, both in Australia and globally, for me to come on as an activist and as a presenter. So I would present information to children, to parents, to teachers. But then the research that I had done at university, so my degree is in science, just benefited or sort of complemented that work. So then I went into the research side of things and was looking at ways we could, create different policies within organizations and also at a government level within Australia to talk about eating disorders and the impact that it was having on young people. So at the time, body image was a leading cause of concern for the youth of Australia. And so we developed programs to implement into schools, but then also ways in which we could talk to professionals, so to doctors and psychologists and sporting bodies, about how they could talk about these issues with athletes or with students. And so it sort of became my life's mission in many ways. I was able to use my lived experience, but also my academic experience as well, to really focus on bringing these issues to light. And so over the last sort of 10 to 12 years, that's how things have evolved. And then within the space of body image, I wanted to then talk to much younger kids about difference, because I was talking to adolescents year after year after year, and the same issues were coming up. And I thought, I need to get to these kids younger. We need to try and prevent negative body image from being such an issue for teenagers, because it was impacting in so many different ways. And I think the complexities of body image is something that people don't really understand. You hear the term body image and people think about appearance, but you have to delve into that a little bit more, because how we look is based on how we think and feel about our appearance. So it encompasses race, gender, ethnicity, religion, sexuality, whether or not you live with a disability, whether or not you've had an illness. So all of those things need to be looked at if we're going to create any profound change when it comes to body image. So the work that I'm focusing on right now is children's books about difference and disability, and going into schools and having these conversations with young children, like as young as 4 or 5, about what difference is. And what is beautiful is that for the most part, they don't see difference the same way as adults do. And it's just so refreshing to go into a school and for kids to say, obviously they see that I have one arm. And the first question will be, what happened to your arm? And once I explain to them, I was born this way, most of the time they're so bored. I think they're expecting this, crazy story about, some accident or a shark attack or something like that. But they then want to talk about anything and everything else. It's not such an issue for them. And it's been the most amazing thing to work with young kids and to then relay that information back to adults, back to teachers, back to parents, and back to corporates, and say, as adults and as parents, our role is to behave in ways that our children will then replicate. So it's not so much about what we say, but what we do. And I think that, for the most part, a lot of parents, if they see me in the park, for example, and their child says, "Oh, mummy, that lady only has one arm," I hear the shh, and the parents will pull their child away. But what you do in that situation is just reaffirm to your child that difference or disability is something negative. It's something that we don't want to talk about. It's something that needs to be hidden. And so I tell all parents and grandparents and aunts and uncles is, if your child notices me in a public place and they have a question, please come and talk to me. I would much rather that your child asks me a question as opposed to pointing or staring, or to have them ushered away so that they think that the difference that they've seen is something bad. Because what we're trying to teach our children is that difference just is. It doesn't matter. Every single one of us looks different, on this planet. And so when we see disability and when we see, different skin color and hair color and eye color, we need to get to a place where society just accepts that for what it is. And I don't think we're there yet. I think we have a long way to go. Certainly here in the UAE, we were sort of mentioning earlier that we don't see a lot of people with a disability here. We don't see a lot of elderly people here. And unfortunately, that can make the journey and the conversation with parents and children all that bit more difficult, because it isn't what we see every day. And so I'm trying really hard to change that. And because in Australia, we see disability all the time. Here, not so much. And I think when we don't see it enough, it's obviously much more confronting when we do. So when a child does see me in the park, they're like, "Well, we've never seen anybody with one arm before," and they haven't. And and so we need to somehow encourage this level of normalizing disability so that children feel comfortable. And that's where I'm at the moment, and that's what I'm sort of trying to do within the schools and with the children's books. But it always comes back to, how can I have conversations with parents so that they understand that we have to try so hard not to project our own worries or concerns about difference or disability onto our children, because that's where they're going to learn it. And so we have a responsibility to make sure that it's not about protecting our children from what's different. I think that level of fear is what holds us back even more. But it's about just encouraging conversation in the moment, I think, is the most important thing.
I love it. I love what you say. And I would love for you to speak to at my school, like at my kids' school as well, actually. So I might ask them. But I think what is really like crucial, what you mentioned here, is that people learn, or kids learn, through their parents' behavior and their surroundings. Yeah. And I think what our kids here learn is about the different religions and races and skin colors, because that's totally normal for them. What they don't see, like you said, but what we probably saw more when we were younger, me in Germany as well, I was saying that I saw a lot more old people where limbs were missing when I grew up because of the war. But here the kids don't see that. But I think what the advantage here then is, the different backgrounds from people, colors, hair color, whatever, which is totally normal for them. So I thought it's really crucial. Yes. Thank you so much, Jessica, for coming on the Mums and Biz podcast. It was really amazing. You're so inspiring, everything what you have done and what you're doing. And I think we can all learn so much from you. My last question is, where can people find you and follow you and learn more from you?
Thank you. And it's honestly my pleasure. I mean, I really feel grateful, that for you to invite me to be part of your podcast and to have this opportunity to be on the platform. So thank you so much. If anyone does want to follow along on Instagram, it's Jessica Smith 27. My website is jessicasmith.com.au. If any mums, parents have any questions about, how to talk to their children about disability, or any questions at all, please feel free to reach out. But yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. And it's nice to be part of, communities where, women in particular are empowering one another. And it's really lovely. So thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, thanks for coming. And I just want to mention something as well, because I've started a new fashion brand. I've seen you a lot for working with other fashion brands now. You're working with Briar Prestige Suits, right? I think that's really, really great too. So I'm sure I will see you in that field as well somewhere soon, maybe.
We hope so. And I think, saying before, that's why it's so exciting, because here there's so much opportunity. Sometimes when people see doors that are closed or half open, they see it as a challenge. But for me, it's like, no, there's a lot of opportunity here. And the fact that there's so many brands that want to work with me, someone with a disability, and all of these brands, by the way, are run by females. I'll add that because that's very significant. I feel that it's a beautiful journey, and I'm just so glad to be a part of it. So yes, hopefully we see more of it.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you very much, and have a great day.
Thanks, Emilia.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Mums in Biz podcast.
If you loved it, please share it with your network and leave us a review.
If you would like to connect with us, please visit the Mums in Biz podcast Instagram page or check the description for our direct contact.
Thanks for tuning in, and we will see you next time.